If you think modern supercars are the only ones that ever broke the sound barrier on four wheels, think again. The 1970s were the Wild West of American muscle, when the quarter mile was a rite of passage and legends were born at the drag strip. But which machines truly scorched the pavement, and which left pretenders in the dust? Buckle up as we relive the tire-shredding, gas-guzzling glory days of the 13 fastest 1970s muscle cars ever to demolish the quarter mile. 70 Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454 LS6. There are muscle cars, and then there's the 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454 LS6, a vehicle so steeped in legend that even people who've never seen one in person feel a rush of adrenaline at the mention of its name. This car didn't just compete, it dominated, rewriting the rules of what a factory-built street car could achieve. For many, the LS6 remains the yardstick by which all muscle is measured. Let's start with the numbers. The heart of the beast was the 454 cubic inch, 7.4-liter LS6 big block V8, factory rated at 450 horsepower and 500 lb-ft of torque. But in the age of underreported numbers and insurance games, those figures were conservative. Many drag racers whispered of true outputs well north of 500 horses. This car could consistently hammer out quarter-mile times in the low 13s, with the right driver and sticky tires breaking into the high 12s. In 1970, those numbers bordered on the absurd. But raw power is only half the story. The Chevelle's aura began at a stoplight. The throaty, loping idle, the chrome SS badges, the dual racing stripes that seem to vibrate with barely contained energy, slide behind the wheel, and you're confronted by an interior that means business. Bucket seats, a horseshoe shifter, and a tash that redline dreams as easily as engines. Drop the clutch, mash the throttle, and you were catapulted into the kind of acceleration that left even seasoned drivers gasping for air and gripping the wheel in disbelief. There's a reason the LS6 Chevelle is a legend among legends. It was a brute, unsophisticated, thirsty, loud, and impossible to ignore. But it was also more than numbers. It was an icon of American confidence, a high watermark of speed, sound, and muscle. Decades later, collectors and enthusiasts treat surviving examples like museum pieces. But the stories of street races won, egos bruised, and quarter miles conquered are what truly keep the LS6 alive in the imaginations of speed lovers everywhere. 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda. The mere sight of a 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda can make even the most hardened car enthusiast go weak in the knees. Born from Chrysler's obsession with pure performance, the Hemi Cuda became the crown jewel of Mopar muscle, combining jaw-dropping design with a fearsome reputation at the drag strip. This wasn't just a car, it was a statement, a rolling, roaring testament to the era's need for speed. At the heart of the Hemi Cuda was the 426 Hemi V8, a race-bred engine with hemispherical combustion chambers, dual four-barrel carburetors, and a reputation for shredding tires and breaking hearts. Officially rated at 425 horsepower, it was a marvel of American engineering. Built for domination rather than moderation. Drop the hammer, and the Hemi would launch the Cuda down the quarter mile in 13.1 seconds, sometimes less with good traction and an unflinching driver. But the Hemi Cuda was more than just numbers. Its design was pure attitude, a shaker hood that rumbled with the engine's every breath, bold colors with high contrast graphics, and lines that screamed Predator. When it pulled up at a light, everyone knew what they were looking at, and most were smart enough not to challenge it. Driving a Hemi Cuda was not for the faint of heart. The power was explosive, almost violent, an all-or-nothing surge that demanded skill and respect. The suspension and brakes, though advanced for the day, often struggled to keep up with the engine's fury, making the Cuda a white-knuckle experience at full throttle. But for those who could handle it, the rewards were epic, instant legend status, and the kind of stories that would be retold for decades. Collectors today treat the Hemi Cuda like sacred ground, but in its heyday, it was a street-fighting brawler, never the most common car on the block, but always the most feared. 1970 Buick GSX Stage 1. In a world of loud colors, racing stripes, and tire-smoking burnouts, the 1970 Buick GSX Stage 1 proved that sometimes real muscle wears a suit. Buick was known for luxury and comfort, but with the GSX Stage 1, they decided to teach the rest of Detroit a lesson in torque, sophistication, and raw performance. This was the car that turned the tables and then left the competition eating dust. The GSX Stage 1's most potent weapon was its 455 cubic inch V8, equipped with high-flow heads, a radical cam, and enough low-end torque to launch the Buick into orbit. Officially rated at 360 horsepower, but generating a jaw-dropping 510 lb-ft of torque, the Stage 1 was deceptive. On paper, it looked like a comfortable cruiser. On the strip, it became a quarter-mile monster, laying down times in the 13.3–13.4 second range, easily matching or exceeding the best from GM, Ford, and Mopar. What made the GSX Stage 1 even more remarkable was its dual nature. The plush bucket seats, full instrumentation, and whisper-quiet ride at low speeds made it the perfect gentleman's express, but a firm foot on the gas pedal instantly transformed it. Rear tires screamed for mercy, the nose lifted, and the car surged forward with a relentless, almost silent authority. Collectors and racers who underestimated the GSX did so at their peril. This Buick didn't need flashy stripes or cartoon characters. It let its performance do the talking. In a straight line, it was nearly unbeatable, and stories abound of luxury Buicks rolling up to the strip, only to put far more aggressive-looking competitors to shame. Today, the GSX Stage 1 stands as a testament to Buick's engineering prowess and the wild, wonderful days when performance could come wrapped in comfort and still rule the quarter mile. 1971 Dodge Charger Super Bee 446-pack. Step aside, wallflowers. The 1971 Dodge Charger Super Bee 446-pack wasn't interested in subtlety. It was big, brash, and built for one thing, intimidating the competition on the street and the strip. With its triple-carb 6-pack setup and a 440 cubic inch V8, this Mopar legend was a force of nature in the early 70s muscle car wars. Dodge's Super Bee name had already made its mark by the time the Charger got the badge, but the 1971 model with the 446-pack took things to a new level. Under that bulging hood sat an engine set up for serious speed. 3 Holley 2-barrel carburetors that gulped air and fuel, sending it into a block that was built to take punishment. Rated at 385 horsepower, the 446-pack could reliably propel the Charger through the quarter mile in 13.7 seconds, blistering for a car of its size and era. But raw speed was only half the appeal. The Charger Super Bee wore its attitude on its sleeve. Hood pins, wild stripes, and a cartoon bee logo with a stinger as sharp as its exhaust note. Inside, it was all business. Bucket seats, a pistol grip shifter, and instrumentation that reminded you of the car's racing roots. The Super Bee's suspension and brakes were beefed up to handle the fury of the 440. But even so, keeping this beast pointed straight at full throttle required a steady hand and nerves of steel. On the street, the Charger Super Bee became an instant legend. Owners and bystanders alike tell tales of stoplight duels and midnight drag races, with the big Mopar often emerging victorious. In today's world of electronic controls and digital dashboards, the Charger Super Bee stands as a monument to an era when muscle was king and intimidation was part of the package. 1970 Ford Torino Cobra 429 Super Cobra Jet. In the world of muscle cars, the 1970 Ford Torino Cobra 429 Super Cobra Jet wasn't interested in playing second fiddle to anyone. This was Ford's shot across the bow, a machine built for battle at the drag strip, with engineering borrowed directly from NASCAR. If you wanted the ultimate in blue oval performance, the Super Cobra Jet delivered in spades. The centerpiece was, of course, the 429 cubic inch V8, a monster of an engine equipped with a 4-barrel carb, solid lifters, and heavy-duty internals. The Super Cobra Jet option added even more muscle, oil cooler, beefier rear end, and a special drag pack for those who demanded nothing but the best. Officially rated at 375 horsepower, the true output was closer to 500, and quarter-mile times in the 13.9 second range were possible with the right setup. But the Torino Cobra wasn't just about speed, it was about attitude. The shaker hood scoop trembled with every blip of the throttle, and the no-nonsense lines gave the car a predatory stance. Inside, it was pure business. A 4-speed manual, heavy-duty tack, and nothing you didn't need. Drivers loved the Cobra for its ruggedness. It could take endless abuse, and those who understood how to launch it, balancing clutch, throttle, and sheer nerve, could embarrass almost anything else on the street. Today, the Torino Super Cobra jet is celebrated by Ford fans as one of the last great unfiltered muscle machines, an icon from the peak of Detroit's horsepower wars. 1971 Plymouth GTX 446 barrel. The 1971 Plymouth GTX, with the legendary 446 barrel setup, was and remains a masterclass in American high-performance engineering. While it wore the suit and tie of Chrysler's gentleman's muscle car, underneath it was a wild child ready to tear up the drag strip with relentless ferocity. The heart of the beast was the 440 cubic inch V8, fed by 3 Holley 2-barrel carburetors, hence the 6-barrel nickname. This setup delivered instant throttle response and a rush of power that felt almost bottomless. Rated at 385 horsepower, the true figure was likely much higher. The GTX could routinely run quarter-mile times of 13.7 seconds or better, a remarkable feat for a car that could also double as a family cruiser. But the numbers only tell part of the story. The GTX's design combined brute strength with understated elegance, chrome accents, subtle badging, and a look that said, "Don't mess with me," without screaming for attention. The interior was surprisingly plush for a muscle car. Thick carpeting, a full-gauge package, and seats that cushioned the blow of brutal acceleration. On the street, the GTX was a force to be reckoned with. The 6-barrel's instant power delivery made it a terror at stoplights and drag strips alike. Racers and collectors often talk about the car's split personality, mild-mannered when you wanted, a raging beast when provoked. For many, the GTX represented the last gasp of true gentleman's muscle, a car that could take you to dinner on Friday night and the winner's circle on Saturday. Today, the GTX 446 barrel is revered as a rare blend of style and savagery, a muscle car that could do it all and looked fantastic doing it. 1970 Pontiac GTO Judge Ram Air 4. There's muscle, and then there's the 1970 Pontiac GTO Judge Ram Air 4, a car that defined an era and then smashed the definition for good measure. This was the e-ticket ride for the street racer or drag strip regular who demanded not just power, but personality, style, and a badge of honor. At its core was the Ram Air R4 400 cubic inch V8, a marvel of engineering with high compression, forged internals, and aggressive cam profiles. Officially rated at 370 horsepower, the engine was famously underreported, with true figures likely pushing past 430 horses. The quarter-mile times backed up the hype, 13.7 seconds in street trim, and quicker with slicks and skilled hands. But the Judge was never just about numbers. Pontiac gave it the full rock star treatment. Wild color options like Orbit Orange and Judge-specific graphics that left no doubt about what you were driving. The rear wing was pure attitude. The functional Ram Air Scoop signaled business, and the interior came with all the right gauges and a Hurst shifter as standard equipment. Driving the Judge was a visceral experience. The cam lope at idle, the punchy power band, and the feeling that you were at the wheel of something that just shouldn't exist outside of a cartoon. The Judge demanded respect, not just from competitors, but from its own driver. It wasn't the easiest car to wrangle in traffic, but point it down the quarter mile and it became unstoppable. The GTO Judge Ram Air 4 is a snapshot of peak American muscle, loud, proud, and unapologetic. It stands today as a cultural icon and a reminder that sometimes the most outrageous option is the best one. 1970 Oldsmobile 442 W30. The 1970 Oldsmobile 442 W30 was the quiet killer of the muscle car world. Unlike its flashier cousins, the 442 didn't need wild graphics or cartoon mascots to prove its worth. It relied on pure engineering and a sleeper vibe that made it one of the most respected and feared machines at the Strip. The heart of the W30 was the massive 455 cubic inch V8, breathing through special heads, a wild cam, and an efficient air induction system. The official horsepower figure was 370, but real-world output was easily over 400. What really mattered, though, was torque. 500 plus lb-ft delivered at low RPM, enough to break the rear tires loose with a gentle squeeze of the gas pedal. On the quarter mile, the W30 could deliver 13.9-second passes with a competent driver. But the Olds wasn't just about brute force. The W30 package included special weight-saving components, like the instantly recognizable red plastic inner fenders, and a carefully tuned suspension that kept the big coupe stable under full power. The interior was classic Oldsmobile, comfortable, refined, and a bit more restrained than its muscle-bound rivals. The 442 W30 had a reputation among racers. It would show up at the track looking like a businessman, then leave everyone else wondering what just happened. Owners loved its combination of comfort and raw speed, and tales of the businessman's hot rod embarrassing big-name rivals are legend in muscle car circles. Today, the W30 is treasured by collectors as one of the ultimate sleepers, a car that proved you didn't need to shout to win the race. 1973, Pontiac Trans Am SD425. As the golden age of muscle faded and insurance companies and emissions laws began to take their toll, most American performance cars lost their edge. But in 1973, Pontiac staged one last rebellion, the Trans Am SD455, a car that proved Detroit could still build a true street monster if it really wanted to. The SD stood for Super Duty, and it was more than just a marketing ploy. The SD455 engine was hand-assembled, featuring forged internals, reinforced block, and a specially tuned camshaft, built to take abuse and ask for more. Even with smog gear and restrictive exhausts, it produced a conservatively rated 290 horsepower. In reality, the output was closer to 390 horses, and the SD455 could blast through the quarter-mile in 13.9 seconds, a time few believed possible in the mid-70s. But the SD455 wasn't just about numbers. It wore the now iconic Screaming Chicken decal on the shaker hood, bold fender flares, and a stance that said, "I refuse to go quietly." The Trans Am handled surprisingly well, with improved suspension and disc brakes making it more than just a straight-line brute. Enthusiasts and collectors soon realized what Pontiac had done, slipped a full-on race motor into a street car at a time when the rest of Detroit was neutering performance. Stories still circulate of SD455s beating much older muscle at the strip, all while flying under the radar of the authorities. Today, the SD455 is a unicorn, representing the last stand of true American muscle before the curtain came down. 1971 Chevrolet Camaro Z Year 396. If the first-generation Camaro Z28 was about handling and agility, the 1971 Camaro Z28 396 was about unadulterated muscle. With its big block power and sharp styling, this Camaro didn't just look fast. It was a true threat at the strip and on the street, bridging the gap between two eras of American performance. The 396 cubic inch V8 was rated at 375 horsepower in its prime, but by 1971, emissions requirements had begun to clamp down, so the official numbers were lower. Still, with a few tweaks, it was easy to unlock the car's real potential. The Z28 396 could blaze through the quarter mile in 14.0 seconds, thanks to its high-revving, torquey engine and stout Muncie 4-speed. But the Camaro wasn't just about the numbers, it was about presence. The split front bumper, long hood, and fastback roofline gave the Z28 a menacing profile, while the optional RS package added sophistication. The interior, with its deep buckets and classic round gauges, put the driver at the center of the action. On the street, the Z28 396 commanded respect. It wasn't the wildest or rarest muscle car, but it was well-rounded, able to corner with confidence, handle long trips, and deliver neck-snapping acceleration on command. For many, the 71 Z28 was the last true Camaro before performance faded, a car that embodied the transition from the wild 1960s to the more restrained years that followed. Today, it's a cherished classic, revered for its style, sound, and unbreakable link to a golden era. 1970 Dodge Challenger RT 440 six-pack. Few cars capture the raw, unfiltered spirit of the muscle car era, quite like the 1970 Dodge Challenger RT 440 six-pack. With its wide stance, bulging hood, and iconic styling, the Challenger was Dodge's bold entrance into the pony car wars. But it was the 440 six-pack option that transformed it into a street legend. Under the hood sat a 440 cubic inch V8, topped with 3 two-barrel carburetors, hence the six-pack name. This setup wasn't just for show. It delivered a tidal wave of torque and a factory rating of 390 horsepower, hurling the Challenger through the quarter mile in just 13.8 seconds. But the Challenger wasn't only about numbers. The design was pure attitude. Hood scoops, vibrant high-impact paint colors like Plum Crazy and Go Mango, and enough chrome to turn heads wherever it went. Inside, the cockpit felt like a command center, with deeply bolstered seats and a pistol grip shifter that begged to be grabbed. When you planted your right foot, the six-pack responded instantly. The front end would lift, the rear tires would howl, and the Challenger would leap forward like a wild animal let off its chain. It was a rush that few cars, then or now, could match. Driving a Challenger RT440 six-pack was about more than just speed. It was about making a statement, about swagger and presence. This was a car that made no apologies, demanded attention, and let everyone know exactly who ruled the strip. 50 years later, it's still a rolling symbol of American bravado and mechanical excess. 1971 Ford Mustang Boss 351. By 1971, the Ford Mustang was evolving. It had grown in size and gained a touch more sophistication, but Ford's engineers were determined not to let their iconic pony car go soft. That's where the Boss 351 comes roaring in, a one-year-only masterpiece that's revered by muscle car fans as one of the most underrated and potent Mustangs ever to hit the street. At its heart was the 351 cubic inch Cleveland V8, equipped with solid lifters, forged pistons, and a radical camshaft, officially rated at 330 horsepower, but widely considered to be underrated. This was no ordinary 351. The Boss version was a high-revving beast, able to wind out past 6,000 RPM, a rarity in American V8s of the era, matched to a close-ratio 4-speed manual transmission and a 3.91 traction lock rear end. The Boss 351 could tear through the quarter-mile in just 13.8 seconds, running alongside much larger displacement rivals. But the Boss 351 was about more than just straight-line speed. Its handling set it apart, thanks to a competition suspension package, beefy sway bars, and front disc brakes. This Mustang wasn't just built to go fast in a straight line. It could carve corners with confidence, making it a true dual threat on both road and strip. Visually, it wore its performance credentials proudly. A functional Ram air hood, bold Boss 351 graphics, blacked-out trim, and optional rear spoiler, and Magnum 500 wheels gave it a stance that was all business. Inside, it was Spartan, but purposeful, with high-back bucket seats and a Hurst shifter that fell perfectly to hand. For those lucky enough to own one, every drive felt special because the Boss 351 rewarded skill and punished the timid. It was a what-might-have-been moment in muscle car history, standing as the last of the high-performance Mustangs before tightening emissions and insurance cracked down. Today, it's a rare and coveted reminder of Ford's golden era of drag strip dominance. 1970 AMC AMX 390. AMC never had the deep pockets or flashy image of Detroit's Big Three, but that only made their achievements more impressive. The 1970 AMC AMX 390 stands as one of the great underdog stories of the muscle car era, a compact, aggressive two-seat coupe that dared to challenge the establishment and often came out on top. The AMX's uniqueness started with its design. Unlike other muscle cars, which were often full-sized or mid-sized coupes with plenty of comfort features, the AMX was a true sports car at heart. Short wheelbase, no back seat, and a body that looked ready to pounce. Its purpose was singular, to be quick, nimble, and unrelenting. The interior was all business, offering only what a driver needed to focus on the road ahead: a tachometer, firm bucket seats, and a stubby shifter. The real story, of course, lay under the hood. The 390 cubic inch V8, rated at 325 horsepower and 420 lb-ft of torque, turned the lightweight AMX into a strip predator. While a 14.2-second quarter-mile may not seem world-beating on paper, you have to consider the context. The AMX was a featherweight compared to its rivals, and its power-to-weight ratio allowed it to hang with much bigger, more expensive machinery. With minimal frills and maximum determination, it regularly embarrassed the big boys at stoplights and drag strips across America. AMC's engineers focused on making the car quick and reliable. The chassis was tight, the steering direct, and the suspension up to the challenge of aggressive driving. What the AMX lacked in brand cachet and luxurious extras, it made up for in sheer attitude. It was the car for drivers who wanted something different, something raw, unpretentious, and built to run. Today, the 1970 AMX 390 has achieved cult status. It's a classic that's cherished for its uniqueness, its agility, and its role as the ultimate muscle car outsider, a reminder that you don't have to be the biggest to earn respect. Sometimes, all you need is guts, a big heart, and the will to stand toe-to-toe with giants, and maybe even steal a few trophies while you're at it. So, which of these tire-shredding icons would you choose for one last blast down the quarter mile? Whether you worship at the altar of Mopar, bow to the bow tie, or root for the underdog, the 1970s proved that the muscle car spirit would never die. Let us know your favorite in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more legends from the golden age of speed. Until next time, keep it fast, keep it loud, and keep it classic.